Hey, so good to see you. You are here for another video. And today's topic, I'm pulling out my notes. Pulling out my notes. Okay, so today we're talking about the shift that excuse me, the shift that I am seeing happening with women over 40 and the work that they are doing. What is happening with women who are over 40 and the work that they are doing, particularly in this time and age of change and artificial intelligence and all the things that are happening in technology. Um, it's not necessarily a loud shift, not even necessarily dramatic, but it's happening with women. Um, and I'm having more conversations with women who are just sort of looking at me and what it is that me and other people like myself who have made a leap to do something different with their lives. If you don't know me, my name is Helana Black. I've been living overseas since 2018. I've lived in 10 countries across Africa, Asia, Europe, and Latin America. Um, and I have taken my business with me. I started off as a freelance writer. And has sort of slowly shifted into consulting work with women who are interested in creating lives that are based on um, who want to be known for these ideas that they develop around the expertise that they have developed over a number of years. And they turn it into books, talks, and other types of thought leadership. And so that's what I'm here to be able to talk to you about today. So this shift that I am seeing in this work that I am doing with women who are over 40, um, and they're sort of tired and they're looking for something new. These are experienced women. These are women who have spent 20 to 30 years building careers that they're proud of. Nonetheless, they are proud of it. They've done all the things. They've done the education. They've, did all the trainings, they got all the titles, they've had the family, and they're looking for something new, something different, something that sort of honors what it is that they've been doing, as opposed to, climbing another rung on the corporate ladder. They just want to do something else and they don't quite know how to be able to get there. And so this shift is, it's subtle, but it's really powerful. And I really want to talk about this for a little bit. Um, and so for many of us, the goal has been career success. And of course, career success can look like many things. It can look like promotions. It can look like, the titles. It can look like, the plaque on the wall, the institutional recognition. It could look like just the process of climbing the professional ladder. And depending on what industry, I found that depending on what industry that you work in, um, some industries or companies do it better than others. I've kind of always worked in a nonprofit industry, in education, higher education. And they've always done a terrible job with those things. And so I didn't quite get the whole, you know, going up the ladder for new promotions and titles and things like that. Unless of course, sometimes it will come with a nice little pay increase. But when you work in education, that pay increase isn't always worth it. But in other industries, you know, I've spoken to other women where it is worth it, has been worth it for them. Um, but at a certain age, you kind of stop becoming interested in doing this sort of work for others and you start to ask different questions about what else is possible for me. You kind of feel like you've already done all the things in your job and your corporation, and the other possibilities for the other corporations that you might need to, that, that process sort of gets kind of old. And so what I'm finding is that women are starting to ask different questions. They don't want to know how can I move up in my career, but they're really asking questions about where can I go where my ideas will be respected? Where can I go where my ideas will be able to grow and evolve beyond the container of this organization? They're asking, what is it that they can create that feels new and fresh, and it suits all of it suits who it is that they have become, and they have a vision for who it is that they are becoming, and trying to create this thing that has legs and can grow with them wherever it is that they want to go. For some people, it may be, you're looking for location mobility more than just remote jobs. But location mobility. You can go anywhere in the world that you want at any time and still be able to make dependable income. You don't feel, maybe you want to be able to work less hours and still be able to take care of whatever your life responsibilities are. Maybe there's a certain area of um, your research, the topic that you're most interested in, things that you're excited about, that you want to be able to spend more time in, that your job or your career or your industry wouldn't necessarily allow you space to do that, because that's just not what you've done over the years. And so you're sort of looking to make a shift that's all your own. Like nobody else is going to be able to tell you to or give you permission to be able to make this shift. You are kind of clear that you're going to have to do something drastically different in order for your life to change, right? And so at a certain point in life, many accomplished women realize something that's uncomfortable, and that their career container is no longer big enough for their thinking. They've accumulated all the experience. They've got all the insight about their field. Their opinions about how things should evolve, that you might be bumping heads against, certain other people that you're working with. Um, but here's the thing, the institutions that you work in often only reward um, your ability to execute somebody else's plan, and not necessarily your independent thinking. I'll say that again. The institutions that a lot of us are working in only reward execution of someone else's plan and not necessarily your own independent thinking. And so something really starts to happen here around the age of 40 to 50, 60 plus. Women begin looking for new containers for their ideas. Now, if I'm honest about my own life, this kind of happened a while ago for me. I kind of knew in my 20s that having a regular job wasn't really for me. Like I couldn't get into the whole. The whole, come to work and sitting in a cubicle for a number of years until somebody says that you're, now you've earned a spot to be a little bit more senior. That didn't make sense to me. Like I've always been sort of a creative person with creative ideas and, projects that I've always worked on and created things on my own. I've always been a really creative person. And I have tried, God knows I have tried, worked really hard to be able to figure out where I can execute on my ideas. But what I found was that I was always sort of butting heads with other people, or that my ideas were not, places weren't ready for the ideas that I was sort of coming with, or I was asking for change that was not, the organizations weren't ready for the type of change that I was sort of asking for. And, I was just sort of being asked to be another cog in the wheel, which has never really sat well for me. And so over the years, I've kind of learned how to be able to do things on my own, which is why I became a freelancer in 2015. And then, of course, the freelancing evolved into doing consulting work, and magazine writing, and a number of other things that I have done to be able to create um, my own media company. And so that shift that we're talking about here looks like uh, women who are really want to create their own empire around the ideas that they want to develop. And so they're doing things like, newsletters. They're doing newsletters like Substack. I've done a few videos on Substack that seem to be quite popular. You've got book ideas. You want to be able to do some sort of a podcast. A lot of you are writing essays and magazine articles. You want to do public speaking. You want to do all the things. And be clear, this is not about becoming an online influencer. That's not what I'm talking about. What you're doing is you have an idea for something in an industry or an area of work that you're highly familiar with, and you have a new outlook, a new viewpoint, a fresh take on that idea, and you want to be able to stand on it, and you want to be able to find the places where your voice is going to make sense and be able to make a profit off of it. Like, this is the business. Like, this is not, some cute stuff that we do on the weekend here. These are the things that I do for myself that people actually pay me to do. I get paid for consulting. I get paid to speak. I get paid to write. I get paid to appear in places, to be able to facilitate conversations. This is not, um, this is not light stuff. And it's just a bonus that I get to do it from the beach in Mexico. That's the bonus. Oh, um, so it's not about being an influencer, but because your ideas have really outgrown the rooms that you've been working in over the years, over the decades. In a lot of ways, what's happening is that you're having sort of a second intellectual life, is what I call it. You have a second intellectual life that's beginning to emerge here. And this is a phase where your experience turns into thought leadership. It turns into writing. It turns into you having a public contribution that is yours, has your particular stamp on it, that's exciting for you. So midlife is the perfect time for you to actually do this. Um, it's actually the perfect time for you to be able to begin publishing your ideas. Because by this stage, a lot of women, you've had real experience. You've been working, as I said, for decades. You've developed your own perspective. You've seen people come and go. Businesses have come and go. They've opened and closed. You've seen the trends show up and disappear. So you have a real perspective on what is happening within your industry, within your topic of interest. Um, and because you have a particular perspective, because of your experience, you have the courage to question systems and what's working and what's not working. And that's really the kind of energy that is valuable in the consulting space, in the speaking space. Those are the type of viewpoints that people write books about. And so you don't have to pretend that you don't have an opinion to share when it's your space. When you have created your own space, you feel a lot more free to be able to do the thing that you have always wanted to do, instead of trying to always have to fit, what the group is saying. And that may not have really been a bad thing. I don't want to make it seem like working with the group is always a bad thing. But at some point, you start to feel like, okay, I want to be able to create something that really works for me at this stage in my life. You might be tired. You might have some health concerns that you want to be able um, to tackle. Your family dynamics are changing. Perhaps your children are getting older. I know some people in their 40s who just started having kids. They just got married and had some kids at 45. That's a different dynamic. You've got some different priorities than you did when you were 35. So and so what's different now that you want to be able to do that in midlife is that you have a more of a sense that this moment matters more than any other moment in your life. Like you're done with the experimentation of, just trying stuff out and, that looks interesting. I'm gonna go over there and do that. Like you've done all that already. And now you have a sense of what should be for you, and you want to be able to create that thing. And so for me, this realization has shown up in a lot of ways. After leaving the US in 2018 and living in 10 countries, I've actually lived in more than 10 countries, but since 2018, I've lived in 10 countries. Um, I've just had a lot of time to be able to think about work and life design in a very different way. Um, travel, travel and being away from systems that you sort of have grown up with and have been told that that is the only way to do it. You learn that there are other possibilities when you move away from all that. So you begin to ask, what is it that I actually want to be able to contribute to the world? I'll tell you this, when I left the States in 2018, I was horribly ill. I was burnt out, to say the least. I was saying I was burnt out was to say that I was burnt out would be a nice way of putting it. I had a lot of health issues, and I was just at a space where I couldn't find my creativity anymore. I don't know where the hell it went, but I didn't have it anymore. And I sort of have always prided myself on being a very creative person. And I have, as of late, that was in 2018. I'll tell you, it took me a good 5 years of rest, of real rest, before I actually started to create something, um, before I actually had the energy to be able to create something new. This is really actually the reason why I moved to Mexico. I will tell you, in 2018, I left, was feeling burnt out, to say the least. And I did a lot of work on myself. Um, I did a lot of work on self-awareness, self-leadership, just a lot of self-talk to be able to get myself to a space where I felt good about what it is that I was doing and what I was doing with my life. Um, I processed a lot of grief, um, processing processing grief is something that we don't allow ourselves a space to have in the United States. We don't have ceremonies for processing grief, um, like a lot of indigenous cultures allow themselves to have. And so it just sort of builds up. You're always expected to produce, to do, to give, and you never really take any time to give yourself anything back. And so that process of renewal for myself took 5 years. And I've actually have been doing some research on, recovery from burnout. And people actually do say it takes 5 years. So yeah, that was actually perfect. It took a good 5 years. I've been in Mexico for 2 years, almost 3 years, 2+ years. And the reason why I moved here was because when I choose countries to move to, I don't necessarily have I don't necessarily do a whole list and have conversations with people and write out a whole list. I really just sort of do an inner questioning of what feels good for my life right now. And what came up for me was that I needed a space where I could be closer to people that I could relate to. That's, other women who are closer in age and understanding of what it is, of where it is that I am in life. I wanted to be able to do things where I could travel back and forth to the US if necessary, to be able to, do things like speaking and consulting and things that I've always wanted to do, but wasn't quite sure how I was going to be able to do that. So I was asking this question of what do I actually want to be able to contribute to the world? And so during the 5 years, that a lot of times we think, 5 years of resting, like what the hell were you doing? Um, but I actually, as far as my business was concerned, like I actually did way more in business while I was resting and traveling and having a good time and minding my business and staying away from toxic people and eating good things and enjoying my life. Did, better and continue to improve until I got to a point where I was like, okay, I don't want to be a freelance writer only anymore. I want to be able to do other things. I'm still a freelance writer. I just finished a couple articles, one for Essence Magazine, the other one for Business Insider. The Essence Magazine one just came out this week. The Business Insider, if it hasn't come out already, it should probably come out in the next week or two. And so I like that. I wanted to be able to write for magazines instead of only doing content marketing for companies. Um, and so I like doing all of those things. But after 5 years of resting, I wanted to know, like, what is the bigger plan for my life? Running around the planet and traveling and doing all these great things, those things are nice, but I really wanted to be able to have a home base now, a global home base, one where I can have more access to the family I left behind in the United States. And that's coming together really nicely. Whereas before, I didn't really know how I was going to be able to connect with my family. But being here, there's just, stuff has been happening where um, I feel like my connections, my ties with my family is happening. It's not, and it's the personal work, the self-awareness, and the work that I have done personally on myself that has actually that I think has made a difference in a lot of my other family members as well. Um, and so now I'm like creating a space that's, a creative space in Mexico for myself, but also where my family can come and visit when they want to. I can be able to work with clients when I want to. Um, and that's starting to work out. But had I not done all the other stuff, the resting and the asking questions and the healing work, I would have never gotten here to this point. And so all these other ideas that have been forming in my life for the last 7, 8 years while I've been overseas, but also the stuff that just sort of popped up in my head over the years, all those my ideas about food and travel and getting older and all sorts of things that I had ideas about that I wanted to be able to write about. All of those things are coming to pass now because I get to follow my intuition. Um, and this is so much more exciting than, being at a corporation and working for others in ways that don't fulfill me at this stage of life anymore. And so I ask, what do I want to contribute? What ideas have been forming in my life for years? And where should those ideas actually live? This conversation is really important because what I'm noticing is that many accomplished women aren't trying to necessarily escape work. It's not like, women are wanting to escape what they're doing. They're just trying to evolve their relationship with the work that they have been doing. They still want to be able to work. They still want to be able to contribute. They want their experience to be more than just something, just like a bullet point on a resume, if that makes sense. They want to be able to create a body of work, um, a company, but yeah, a real body of work that sort of expresses who they have become. And even furthermore, it's a container that holds who they are becoming, at least for the next decade or so. And so, I just wanted to turn the question over to you. Have you ever felt like your career was becoming too small for your ideas? Do you have more to say than what your current role actually allows for you to share? And I really love to hear your comments. I'm going to put that question in the description box. So I'll say it again. Have you ever felt like your career was becoming too small for your ideas? And just do you feel like you have always had more to say than what is allowed in your current role? So this question, what to do when your experience becomes bigger than your career, is something that I actually explore with women in my Design the Decade sessions. Design the Decade sessions. Um, and that is actually where I get to help experienced professionals develop the idea that they want to be known for, and they turn it into books, they turn it into talks, and they turn it into different types of thought leadership. And I'm really excited about that, um, about these particular sessions, because we actually come up with a map of your own authority blueprint of what it is that you're thinking about, what it is that you want to be known for, and what that's going to look like for you unfolding over the next decade of your life. Um, and so if that sounds interesting to you, I actually do a short, like a 20-minute session just to be able to help us figure out whether or not these are sessions that would actually be useful for you. So it's called the Strategic Clarity Call. And during the Strategic Clarity Call, we just sit for 20 minutes. I get to learn a little about you, about what you've been thinking about. What is it that you want to, what is it that you believe you want to be able to create? And we get to figure out whether or not this is the decade session is something that would actually work for you. Like if you need help figuring out what that's going to look like. And then beyond that, I do support women who want to write the book, or at least the book proposal. Um, if you want to do keynotes, let's turn your ideas into what your keynote or set of keynote speeches are going to look like. A book or a set of books. Some people are interested in doing thought leadership as a consultant. So, they want to be able to create what is their thought leadership on, LinkedIn as one space or a Substack. What would that look like for you? Does your ideas, how can we help your ideas to be able to spread in these different modalities? Yeah, because I think that this is really interesting. I really want to be able to connect with other women who are just in a space of wanting to create something different than what they have been doing. This is for big people, women who are big thinkers. You're creative thinkers. Women who are not afraid to speak up and move forward on the ideas that you've had for a long time. You've probably been doing things in your life that look sort of weird to folks anyway. To be honest, your life in a lot of ways is already unconventional. Let's just put the plan into place to make it a full-blown unconventional life instead of having your foot in and out from one life to another. Do you hear me? I hope that makes sense. So yeah, so if you are interested in the complimentary 20-minute session, I will have a link to that in the description box. Um, yeah, and I look forward to being able to talk to you. So yeah, that was all that I had. That was all that I had for today. I will come back to you tomorrow for another video. Peace.